Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Locke. Welcome to another episode of Gaffer in Gear. Today we're going to be having a look at the F10 Fresnel mount, which is made for the Aputure 600D Pro. Now, if you're an old school gaffer, you're really going to love this Fresnel. It gives you fantastic barn door cuts like an old school Fresnel used to. The same shadow qualities that you were used to getting in the good old fixtures. Now, you're probably looking at it thinking, wow, this thing is huge, but when you find out how much light this thing pumps out, it's going to look very small. All right, so where to start off the review? So I suppose price. Okay, so you're looking at $350 Australian dollars for the Fresnel and another $210 for the barn door. So that's getting quite expensive. In US dollars, that's 220 bucks typically for the Fresnel and $139 for the barn doors. So it is a bit of expense compared to other brands, but once you find out the firepower of this thing, you can justify the cost of having it. All right, so let's point out the difference between this and other Fresnels. In your standard type Fresnel, you've just got the glass at the front, whereas this unit has double optics, a dual optic system. So you've got a piece of glass in here, you've got a lens in here that throws all the light forwards onto the Fresnel to maximize the light output. So how efficiently does it maximize the light output? So I did a shootout with a Forza 500 with its Fresnel. At 3 meters, that came in at 4,690 lux. Now the 600D with the F10 at the same distance came in at 10,000 lux. So that's 2.1 times brighter. And something to point out here is both lights do flood out to 45 degrees. Now this unit does have a little bit of a hotspot. Now the hotspot is about 7 to 10% brighter than the area around it. So when I take my readings, I'm not taking them in the hotspot, I'm taking them around the edges of the hotspot to give you a fair comparison on the beam. Now this setup is substantially heavier than a Forza 500. So if I don't need this sort of firepower, I'll definitely be moving a Forza 500 around instead of this. But if I do need this level of firepower, I would rather carry this around than my 2.5K HMI Fresnel. So let's see how this compares to the 2.5. Now it is worth pointing out that the average 2.5K HMI floods out to 60 degrees, whereas these only flood out to 45. Now the 2.5K came in at 11,900 lux, which makes this thing 84% the brightness of a 2.5K HMI Fresnel. Or the other way to look at it is the 2.5K came in at 19% brighter than this. So not much in it, but it's not always about brightness because a lot of LED Fresnels are absolute rubbish. So let's put this thing through its paces and see how it holds up. Now it barn door cuts like a traditional Fresnel. And with its 8-leaf barn doors, it'll box up like a traditional Fresnel. And it also has the same beam edge and drop-off characteristics. Now given this unit is almost as bright as a 2.5K HMI, I thought I'd test it out using it the same way as I'd use a 2.5. And that is as sunlight through a window, when I want something with crisper optics than a HMI par. Now this performed just as good as my 2.5K HMI would have. I've got nice lines and shadow textures, and it is bright enough to compete with the sunlight outside and look like it is genuine sunlight. The next thing I thought I'd do was spot it up to 35 degrees. And even though we've lost a bit of our texture, I'm quite surprised at how well it is holding up. My 2.5K HMI Fresnel would definitely have muddy optics at this point. Then, just for giggles, I thought I'd put it into full spot. And we have definitely lost a lot of our sharpness now. It looks like a HMI par, but it's handy to know that if I need the firepower, I've got it there. Next, I wanted to see how much I could control it with the barn doors. I wanted to put the sunlight on the back wall, but not hit the bed. And I was quite surprised with the results. It was just like using an old school HMI Fresnel. I had all the textures that I wanted on the background and the beam was contained to the back wall. So in order to get this sort of quality of optics out of a Fresnel, you have to match up the size of the Fresnel to the size of the COB. If the COB is too big in relation to the Fresnel, or the other way to look at it, if the Fresnel's too small in relationship to the COB, then the light from the COB just ends up flooding all the rings and losing your optics. So at that point, all it's good for is making a spotlight, making a circle of light or intensifying your light output. You won't get good shadows and good barn door cuts like you get out of this. So that unfortunately means that you're going to need, in this case, a 10-inch lens. So this actually isn't a 10-inch lens. So a film and TV 10-inch lens is actually 9.84, I think it is. But this is the same diameter lens you get in a Studio 2K or in a compact 5K Fresnel. So, of course, a big lens means you've got to have barn doors that are going to adequately cut the beam. So everything starts getting big, and that explains why Aputure have such an overbuilt head here. So once you see it as a finished fixture with all these accessories, the over construction of this makes sense because this lock-off is holding this weight really, really easy. This being the same size as a traditional film 10-inch lens, this has a feature that gaffers are going to love. I'm sure if you're a gaffer like me, you've got loads of 10-inch wire kits floating around. And the one thing that has absolutely irritated me with LED Fresnels is you can't get wire kits for them. If you want to reduce the intensity on one half of your beam, you can't do it. But because this is a standard film industry 10-inch lens, you can use your wire kits. But there is a catch. It'll only fit one scrim wire at a time. Now, over the course of my 20-year career being a gaffer, I've come to the conclusion that the vast majority of light manufacturers think that barn doors are decorative. They don't actually understand that they're designed to cut light. That's not the case with these ones. These ones are actually big enough that they can cut the beam. And you've got some nice little add-ons like your 8-leaf barn doors on the sides. But where these are really good is there's no spill light coming out of here. I'll just fire this up. You've actually got your spill ring built in to the barn doors here. So you don't have that gap with the light coming out, which frustrates me with other brands. And the other thing I really like with this is it is not going to fall out of the barn door holder. Now the barn doors are held in place with a spring-loaded latch, and there is a safety wire on the barn doors as well. Now let's quickly go over the build quality of the unit. The barn doors are an all-metal construction. In the Fresnel body, the barn door holders are metal and they're triple screwed in, so they're not going to fall out. The main body of the Fresnel, where you do your flood spotting, is made of a composite material. Now, it's not plastic, it's a composite. Now, I'm not allowed to tell you what this material is because it's a trade secret. But the material is not only strong, it also dissipates heat extremely well. I had this running for 40 minutes and I took a temperature reading on it. So the top of the Fresnel body came in at 24.4 degrees Celsius on a 22-degree day. Now, when you buy the barn doors, they also come with this black dish. So the idea behind this black dish is you've only got one light source. One light source gives you crisper shadows. So you get crisper shadows out of this than you will out of the Fresnel. But of course you don't get the intensity. So to illustrate, this is the barn door cut with the Fresnel, and this is the barn door cut with the black dish. Now, if you're familiar with Aputure's previous barn doors, these are a little bit different because they're not felt lined, because with this intensity, you would burn the felt. So you do get some reflection off the doors. So as you can see here, that does create some multiple light sources. Now, this is a problem with barn doors with pretty much every single brand of lights. All right, so just before we go, let's finish up with some stats. Okay, so the 600D with no attachments at 3 meters came in at 2,620 lux. With its dish on, it came in at 8,150 lux, and that's in the center of its very bright hotspot. Now, with the Fresnel on, it came in at 10,000 lux at 3 meters, so it's actually brighter with the Fresnel than with the faceted dish. In full spot, it came in at 33,300 lux. Now, the Forza 500, at the same distance of 3 meters, with its Fresnel, came in at 4,690 lux, and a 2.5K HMI, which does flood out to 60 degrees, came in at 11,900 lux at the same distance. So that gives you some idea of the output of the thing, particularly comparing Fresnels to Fresnels. Now, if I don't put the next stat, people are going to ask me, and I'm going to have to type it 1,000 times anyway, so I might as well mention it. Comparing this to an M18, the M18 at 3 meters spits out 18,100 lux. So this isn't going to knock over an M18 anytime soon. Anyway, I'm Andrew Locke. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and see you next week on Gaffer and Gear.